All right, there we go. Welcome to the Hip Hop Hustle podcast. I am extremely excited about my next guest, the one and only Jae Skeese. Man, I've been doing a bit of research coming into this interview and watching your career, and it's so impressive to see where you're at. You just recently signed, and by recently, you've been signed by Conway for a little bit right now. I know you're working on a project. You have just released a single, Been Hustling. You've got a project that came out this year as well, the Authenticity Check. And it just feels like your stock is coming up real big, man. But it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey man, salute, man. Thank you for tapping in. I'm excited to be here as well, man. And like you were saying, like I've been putting in a lot of work, and it's great to be here. Salute and shout out to Conway. That single you were talking about, that's actually El Camino. That's his single that I'm featured on. But yeah, man, Authenticity Check, with Big Ghost, that joint has been going crazy. Shout out to Big Ghost. I got the EP that came out this year, Iroquois Pliskin. And that joint had, I had Stove got on there. I had, Conway on there. I had Flea Lord on there. Coda Sevilla was on there. So, I've been working, man, and I'm not stopping either. I'm still putting in a lot of work. So it's good to be here.
How does it feel to now get it feels like you're getting runs on the board? It feels like the momentum has really built up. Like, does it feel like that for you as well? Because from the outside in, it looks like there's some real kind of it's building really nicely now.
No, it definitely it feels like I'm almost there. You know what I mean? Back before I started, really tapping in with Conway, and before I signed with Conway, I never was getting, the different blog looks. I never could go on Twitter and, search my name and, see people having real conversations about, Jae Skeese. It's a lot of things that I've done over the last almost 2 years that have really put me in a different conversation. And I've always been about separating myself from other artists, whether it may have been locally or, just people that I may get grouped in with, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of the things that I've done, like I said, over the last 2 years, especially this year with the project with Big Ghost and, getting features from like Conway, from Flea Lord, from some of these different rappers, El Camino, it's helped me create that separation that I like to have, because I want people to know, like, I'm serious. I'm a very serious artist. I'm serious about my craft. And, I want to be mentioned with the greats. Like, I don't want to come into the game and, have people think, oh no, he's just getting his feet wet. So, we can't put him in that conversation with certain artists. And it's like, nah, as soon as you get word about me and what I bring to the table, I want to be mentioned with, the people that get that respect and the people that you love. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the lane that I'm carving for myself as I continue to grow.
Well, it's definitely showing. And it's interesting that you bring up you want to garner a lot of respect. And the way I look at hip hop right now is there's almost two lanes that you can go in. You can go the lyrical and the real bars, and that's where the goats talked about. And then you can go down the other route, which is making more of the trappy kind of just popular music. Do you find that as well, that it feels like there's a little bit of a split in terms of where hip hop has headed?
I hear what you're saying. I think the way that hip hop has evolved, I think, that it's always been that anyway. You know what I mean? For a long time, I'm not gonna say always, but for a long time, it's been that. You had, artists who make, I guess, party records, and you got artists who make, your message may have more of a deeper message. You know what I mean? It's almost like the balance between having, the Kendricks and then you have the Drakes, and they both can actually cross over and do what each other does. You know what I mean? Kendrick made Swimming Pools. Drake has made, what's one of his deeper songs? Any of the timestamp songs where, 6 p.m. in New York or whatever the case is. I think that those two lanes have existed for a long time. Hip hop was founded on, creating music that was educating people. And then over time, because of the beats and everything, it made it fun. So you could make those fun party records, and then you could make those more informational, more educational records too. So I think it's something that has always been there. I don't think that it's something that has become more prevalent because it's just always been there. But what I do think is the more, obviously the more mainstream sound is going to be like that party sound because, that's what I guess sells more. And that's, it's easier to listen to and digest for a lot of people. So I think, if you want to go the mainstream route, that's more so what you're going to, you're going to create that, you know what I mean? As opposed to if you don't really care about that, if you have an actual message, if you have something that you want people to understand and you want to talk about and you want to connect with people on a different level, then, you'll speak to that point. But I don't think that it's something that is more prevalent now because it's kind of always been there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think maybe we just feel it now because of social media a bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like amplified everything.
For a fact. I agree with that because, and then you have like before, you had a lot of rappers who would speak to, different media outlets, whether it might have been like the Source magazine or it might have been Vibe magazine. Whereas now, if I'm a rapper or, I do hip hop, or whatever, I can go on Twitter and I can tweet the way I feel about something. And that's within like 10 seconds. So the information is, constantly coming out. It's being digested by more people because not everybody back in the day read the Source or read the Vibe. You know what I mean?
Well, how has it been for you? Because obviously, starting at a young age, you started rapping very young. I think I read you had your first show at like 13 years old. Like you were extremely young. Have you seen like the transition between like what the scene was in hip hop when you started versus where it is right now?
I mean, for sure. I think, when I was younger, again, it was kind of like, it was like that era where, a lot of the magazines and blogs were just getting started. You know what I mean? So it was like more so like the Source was like where you would go for all your information. BET was where you would go for all your hip hop information. Like I grew up on Rap City, you know what I'm saying? And hip 106 and Park. Those are like staples in my upbringing in hip hop. And, going to the music stores, like there was a music store that was around the corner from me where I would go and get all the instrumental CDs. And that was how I would like learn how to rap. I would listen to those and I would like rap over those, you know what I mean? But you had to go to the music store to go and get your instrumental CDs, you know what I mean? Whereas now, you can go to hiphopdx.com or you can go to Complex or you can go, to Hypebeast or you can go on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. And just like the information is right there. You have all of your favorite MCs and your favorite artists at your fingertips all the time. You know what I mean? So it's a lot different in that regard. And I feel like back in the day too, you had to, it was just like a certain level of skill that you had to have to even be considered really an MC. And that was like real big for me. Like you can feel it in my music, you know what I mean? Because I come from that era, whereas like now you have a lot of people or a lot of artists, I should say, who their music is more so based off just like the vibe. You know what I mean? And they're not going, it's a lot of artists, I should say, not everybody, but they're just not really going for, a certain level of skill. It's like they go in the studio, yo, I want to rap, I want to make a song. They go to the studio, they put it together, how they put it together, and they put it out. They go to SoundCloud and they put it out and see what people think. You know what I mean? So it's different, definitely in those regards for sure.
It's funny, like I think people listening, people who are like under 20 probably won't even imagine what it was like to go to a store and literally have to pick out like, CDs and pick out literally the albums of instrumentals that you want to do. Like I can barely imagine it in a way, is to like go and like literally sift through and you're waiting and you want to see something good and then you can't really find it because it's not there. It's already sold out. And so you got to pay, and you got to pay at the store. You don't just pay online. It gets delivered to your house. I feel like that's something like, I don't know, it's weird because I never had to do it and I never did it, but like the feeling of it must have been different, of like actually holding something in your hands and being like, this is like a ticket. Like I can, if I use this the right way, like it's like my ticket and to success.
Yeah, it was a lot more different back then. And, I was a kid, like you said, I had like some of my first shows. I was like 12, 13 years old. So, back then, you go to the store and, you want to go get your instrumental CDs. And, I think who was big back in the day was Jay Arms. Jay Arms instrumental. You may not even know who Jay Arms is, but, you would go to the store, you would go and get, your CD. And, we would go and we would take a karaoke machine. So a karaoke machine, back in the day, you can go on YouTube now and you can look up lyrics and play a track with, without the lyrics on it, and, the lyrics will play on the screen. But back in the day, karaoke machines were like big. It almost looked like a jam box.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It looked like one of those. So, and it had the cassette player on it and everything. And we would take the CDs and we would play them. And then when we were ready to record, we would take like a blank cassette tape, put it in there, hit record, and then, so it was like one take, you know what I mean? And you would just rap over it, you would do your thing, stop it, play it back. Oh, okay, it sounded good. Then you could, overdub it again, you know what I mean? So that's why, like, especially with, with the lane that like Griselda, like West, Conway, and Benny, when they started coming out, and Derringer as well, when they started coming out with, vinyls and CDs, and it was like super limited, it almost brought that feeling back, you know what I mean? Like where people, it was like tangible art, you know what I'm saying? Because I think for a long time, we kind of lost like the value in that, you know what I'm saying? So now it's like, when I go look on eBay now and like my vinyls are selling for like, you know what I mean, $1,000 or like $300, you know what I mean? I know that kind of started with what, Griselda was doing at the time, just taking your music and commodifying it, you know what I mean? Because of those physical copies. It's dope, man. It's dope. And it really just brought me back, like you said, like to my childhood, because that was how it was back in the day. We used to really, like, I remember my first cassette was, I want to say it was The Dynasty, Jay-Z's album. And then my first CD I think I bought was between Shine, his first album, and Nelly. His first album was Country Grammar. So it was like, and I remember just holding on to those, man, because they were just like super special to me. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's even crazy for people to listen to. I think cassettes are like things people don't think about. Like I think CDs are like old, and it's so weird for me to say old because I still have CDs. I like my first CD was like Get Rich or Die Trying, 50 Cent. That was my first CD. And so like I still have it. It's kind of like the actual CD box is kind of fucked up and broken, but like the CDs in there are still good. But I think definitely the collector is back. Like collecting in hip hop, it was kind of made tough with streaming music. Like, but now like people like yourself and as you said, people like Benny, Conway, and the Griselda crew, they've made collecting come back. Like people are definitely making vinyls. And I think that's such an underrated part of the culture of like having the vinyl and having the CD and like building out your collection to be like, hey, I've got this joint, I've got the Jae Skeese joint, and I've got the Wu-Tang joint, I've got all these things. And it's just like you build your catalog of music physically at home.
Yeah, no, it's big, man. It's and there's a lot of people who do appreciate it, and I'm glad that it came back, honestly, because even me, like, I'm a big fan of, just having, like, I love having my own stuff. You know what I mean? Like when those packages get shipped in, and I may work with a company, and they may send me a few copies. Like I love seeing it because it's like I was just having a conversation the other day with one of my engineers, and I was like, yo. Even if I don't do anything else, like going forward, if I don't, you know what I mean? If I, God forbid, if I just say, you know what, I don't want to make music anymore today, I live forever on that wax. You know what I mean? Even if I could stop tomorrow, like, so, those tangible items, man, they're like almost like everything to me. It's like really making your stamp, like, yo, I was here on this planet. You know what I mean? It's like etching your name in the wood, especially when we talk about vinyl, like CDs and cassettes are really, really, really dope too. I love doing cassettes, especially because I grew up with like a Walkman. But those are almost like, I want to say like digital. Like wax is a little different. You know what I mean? It's like those waves, it's the grooves and the vinyl. Like it's real special to me, man, for real.
Do you remember like playing vinyls as a kid?
Yeah, we had when I was growing up, like my mom she has like up in her attic, she has like a bunch of vinyls, man, like old school joints. She has like James Brown and like the Temptations and all those joints from like back in the day. She has a lot of that stuff like upstairs in her crates and everything. And I grew up really on a lot of R&B because my mom used to play it all the time. I grew up on like R&B and neo soul. But even when I was like even younger, like when it came to hip hop, a lot of those were on CD, but a lot of like what we listened to on vinyl was like older music, like Michael Jackson, and like, the different groups, the Temptations, and, just all the old school joints. And I remember like just kind of being infatuated with that. Like, you put the joint on there, you put the needle on, and, the sound comes out. It was just always like real cool to me. Like, you know what I mean? And it's got, vinyl has like a different sound. It's like, it's warmer. It's more like you can hear everything. You hear, like, you get a certain feel from it. You know what I mean? It just sounds real good. Like, I don't know. It does something to me. It does something to my soul, for real.
Well, I think there's something about the crackle as well. It's like,
yeah,
there's something about like, it's like the warmth of a fireplace. Like just the sound. It's like something is about to be good. Like I don't know, I like it as well. I've always loved when engineers and when producers and beat makers sample like vinyl sounds. There's something about it to me that like it just, like you said, it feels different. Like and I couldn't help but think is like it would be so cool to see you do an album that is just filled with samples from your mum's crates. Like, you know what I mean? Like you went in and you go and you're like searching through and you're like, this is the stuff my mom listened to. It's almost like, it's like in the weirdest way, a cool tribute, but it's also like, I don't know, there's something cool to me about an album like that. That's like really purposeful where you're going, this is like a tribute to my mom, her generation, but I'm going to show it my way. And I'm going to find songs that she loved and kind of, I don't know, there's something about that. I just literally, as you were talking, I was like, damn, if Jae Skeese was to do that, I think that'd be a dope project.
Man, that's actually an amazing idea, for real. I think that would be really, really dope. And that's something that, my mom for sure would appreciate. But that's something to just draw in your fans too, you know what I mean? And really make them feel connected in a way. You know what I'm saying? I think that's an amazing idea. And I might actually consider that one day. I'm glad we had this conversation. I might have to throw you on there as one of the executive producers.
Well, man, I'd love it. Invite me down to the studio. I'd love to see what you're actually doing. But yeah, it literally just hit me that like, especially because vinyl is so, you could put it on a vinyl as well and literally give it to your mum. I just saw, actual like huge story potential of like, and I think as a fan, I obviously don't make my own music, but like as a fan, what we're drawn into is like, how can we get closer to you as an artist? How can we get closer to you as your story and everything that you do? And it's partly why I do this is like, how can I connect with the people that I like in the industry and the people that like, and see if I can, find more about them. So I think that'd do a lot for a lot of fans is just show them just behind the scenes of like, this is what my family means to me. This is what, music means to me. And this is what inspired my mom moving forward.
No, I think that's dope, especially because, I'm the type of artist that I am. I don't really tell stories and talk about things that I don't do or I haven't done. You know what I mean? There's a lot of artists who, they like to touch on certain topics, and a lot of it is the same. And I think with me being such a big hip hop fan and being able to study different artists, for a long time, I feel like that helped me find my way, in the story that I wanted to tell as a rapper and as a hip hop MC. Like, it made me want to just be as real as possible and like really give my story. And I think with a lot of what people have heard so far, it's been more so me just showcasing my skill as a rapper, as a technical rapper. You know what I mean? And because, when you first come into the game, a lot of people, they're questioning, well, who is this guy? Like, you know what I mean? So you want to showcase that. But then, as your fan base grows, I think it's important to really tell who you are. And I think people are really going to get an understanding of who I am and like my real story and the things that I've been through. They're going to get that on my album. You know what I mean? I'm real excited about that. But just to kind of go back to your point, you know, a project like that will really give even more insight into, you know, who I am, and it would just be another way for the fans to really connect. So I really like that idea.
And you get some old heads on there as well. Like, you know, you get some people that like recognize the samples of like old school, like just amazing old, I don't know. I think there's monster potential. And I know that I'm sure you and your team would figure out how to make it awesome. But I did want to ask you, you speak about like telling your story. Is it tough to figure out how to tell your story? I think like, is it like just being that vulnerable and like going, you know, I'm actually going to share the truth. And like, there's one thing to like, you know, rap about things that you've seen, but like when you really share that intimate piece of yourself, is it difficult to be that vulnerable and just let it out?
I think it is, there is a degree of difficulty to it, but I think it's so important, man, because for a long time, you know, Buffalo didn't have a voice, you know what I mean? And then for another period of time, you know, obviously Griselda has been the voice of Buffalo for years now. But I think I come from like a different, with what I talk about, I'm coming at you from a different angle. Like Griselda, primarily, a lot of the guys, you know, affiliated or, you know, that make up Griselda or have made up Griselda are from the east side of Buffalo, which I am too. But I never was outside. I never was like, you know, I wasn't selling drugs like that. I wasn't, you know, shooting at people like that. I wasn't being shot at like that. I wasn't having these run-ins with police and having run-ins with fiends and all that. I lived a totally different type of life. But I think it's still important to show the other side of what else is here, because it's not just that. It's not just, you know, a bunch of violence. It's not just a bunch of, you know, people running around doing this and doing that. So I think it's very important that I tell my story, because people can then have a better understanding of what it is to be, you know, from where I'm from. I'm giving you a different perspective. I'm telling you, you know, what it's like to be from Buffalo and to have ambitions to, you know, want to take care of your family, and, you know, what it's like to lose your dad at a young age, and, you know, to have doubts and to, you know, get discouraged and then come back from that. What it's like to lose your best friend when you are on the verge of going on your first tour. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all these different things have really happened to me. So I'm able to put it down and really, really make it enjoyable for someone who, you know, may have been through something similar or maybe going through something similar, and then they can use my story to, you know, inspire themselves to make it through. And I think that's my biggest thing, no matter what. You know, I just want to be able to inspire people with my story. I think that's honestly my purpose of even being here on earth. You know what I'm saying? It's just to be an inspiration to others who, you know, have aspirations to do whatever it is that they want to do. And, you know, they may run into some adversity. And I've been that person too. And I think it's important to tell my story because I can help people get through it.
It's interesting that you say that you want to show the other side, to like the different sides to Buffalo, and like, you know, the things that people gravitate towards to are exactly what you said in terms of Griselda and what they've been rapping about. But I think it's a really good point that you bring up, that like, that's not the whole city. That is not everyone's growing up. And I think you're definitely right. We kind of get lost in, if all we hear about Buffalo is one thing, that's all we're going to think about it. And that's all we're going to think about that as a city. And then like doubling on top of that is like, that's all we think about as rappers who come from Buffalo, is like, oh, that's the lifestyle that they had. That's the lifestyle that they all bring. So I think it is really good that you grew up differently as opposed to what we currently hear, and are able to tell that side and still talk about adversities in a different way. It may not be running into the fiend, but it's still going to come differently. And we all go through struggles. And I think, yeah, it's only good that you're you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree. And I think, you know, because you do get people who, you know, they didn't grow up that way, but that's what they still talk about. And, you know, I knew when Griselda, you know, when they initially started, you know, going on their rise, I knew if I ever got a chance, you know, to, you know, whether it was going to be with Griselda or it might have been, you know, with Benny or it might have been with Conway, if I ever, you know, got next to them and, you know, I got in a situation where I was making music with them, I always knew like it was either like me as an artist was either going to work or it wouldn't work. It was like 50-50 because of the imprint that they've already left in the game. Like, you know, like you said, we know what they bring to the table. We know what they're talking about. And Conway is a little different because Conway, he you know what Con talks about, but he also shows another side, which is really dope. You know what I mean? He's been showing that more and more with him talking about, you know, different aspects of his life. But primarily, you know what they're known for. And I kind of figured like their fan base was either going to really accept me for being different or they were either going to really like reject me for being different. And I think at first people understood that I could rhyme, but because what I was saying was so different than what they're used to hearing from Griselda artists, I think it took a while for me to even kind of break through that listener's ear for them to say, okay, you know what? No, Skeese is actually kind of dope. Jae Skeese is dope. Because, you know, I read through, I see the comments and, you know, I read through stuff on Twitter and on Reddit. And, you know, I look at all that stuff, man, because it's important to me, you know what I mean, to see how I'm being received. But that was something that had always been on my mind. I'm like, you know, if I ever do break through and it happens to be with them, it's like 50-50, man. And it just so happens that so far, people have been really receptive. Like, and it wasn't like that at first. Like I said, it was almost like I had to work towards that and just, you know, show time and time again, like, no, I belong here. Like, I deserve to be here. And now I think I'm at a point where I can start to really give my story and be myself because, you know, people understand it now. Like, nah, Jae Skeese can rap, but what else is there to Jae Skeese now? That's what we want to know.
What was the first? Do you remember what they were saying to begin with? Like, is there any comments that stick out? They're like, that shit kind of hurts, but that shit's kind of funny too.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie. So the first song that I was featured on with Conway, first two songs, it was "Crack in the '90s." That was from King to a God, the deluxe, and Stefan Diggs. I had a verse on Crack in the '90s, so it was me, Conway, and Love the Genius. Shout out to Love the Genius too. She's amazing. And a lot of the stuff that I was seeing on Twitter, I remember the day when it dropped. And I was just seeing all these people. Like I was getting so many mentions that day, the day that it dropped. And people were like, yo, who is this dude, Jae Skeese? And again, it was like, I was either seeing a lot of, yo, he can really rhyme. Like, yo, who is this dude? I've never heard of him before. This dude is dope. What's going on? And there was a lot of people who were saying like, oh no, this dude is garbage. Like, who is this dude? Get him out of here. Because I wasn't, again, like if you listen to the verse is ill, the verse is crazy. But I'm not talking about what Khan is talking about. I'm talking about some old other shit. So it was throwing people for a loop, I think, because it was so different. You know what I'm saying? And then Love at the end, she comes on, Love goes crazy. And she killed it. I think she probably had the best verse in the song. But what she was talking about was more akin to what Conway was talking about. So it just kind of automatically, you know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. You know what I'm saying? I get where she's coming from. But who is this dude, Jae Skeese, talking about Revolver Ocelot and all this other, like, what is he talking about? And I think that was like, when that track came out in that day, when I was seeing all this stuff on Twitter, it was kind of like, it didn't like hurt or anything like that. It was kind of like that. It was what I expected because again, going back to the way that I had always felt, it was like, well, yo, this is either going to work or it's not going to work because I may not be accepted by their fan base because of who I am as an artist, which is fine with me because I'm going to be me regardless. I'm not, especially not like I couldn't come out with those songs, you know, and do everything I did, Big Ghost Tape, the EP that I dropped, you know what I'm saying? The different shit that I've dropped and then switch up and start talking about, you know, everything that Khan talks about. No, I'd rather just be myself. And if you accept me for who I am as an artist, then that's cool. Because everybody ain't gonna like my shit, and that's cool. That's just the way of the world. Everybody ain't gonna like everything you do. You know what I mean?
Well, I also think if you did that, people would just be like, oh, I know what Jae Skeese is doing. He's just doing what everyone else is doing, not genuine. We know he didn't live that life. He said he didn't live that life, and now he's rapping about it. And then you just lose the fans anyway. So I think, I mean, I've had conversations countless times about like in hip hop, almost more than any other genre of music or any other industry, you should rap about your life, not about fake shit, because people call you out and they don't believe you, and then you get into trouble, and like it just ends up this rabbit hole of like you just dig your own hole. So I'm interested to know though, what did Con say about it? What was his reaction? Because obviously he knew that your sound is different, and that he probably also expected what you expected, that there would be some fans who really love it, some fans who really don't understand it at first. But what was his reaction when you were kind of figuring out whether people would be receptive?
So it's funny. So Khan is like a fan first. You know what I'm saying? Like it's dope because what I didn't know about Conway before I really, you know, got to be around him and get to know him is that just because he may make a certain type of sound or he's known for a certain type of sound, he's still a fan of a lot of different stuff. You wouldn't even guess that by, I guess, his appearance and the music that he makes, but he's a fan of a lot of different things. And he really appreciates the fact that when I did start coming around and I started getting around him, I didn't change up. You know what I mean? I stayed me. And that's really important to him. And it's important to me because he allowed me to do that. Like, you know, I could have got next to him and he could have said, yo, Skeese, I don't know, like you need to start talking about this. I think you need to be over here kind of in my lane since you're going to be coming in behind me and like what I'm doing. And he didn't do that, which is, I think that's really dope because he let me be myself. You know what I mean? And I think it's just important, man. And it was a point in time when I think after those first couple records came out that I mentioned, he pulled me to the side one day and he asked me, what are you gonna do to like separate yourself from me and from Love the Genius? You know what I mean? Because, you know, again, it was stuff that he was seeing online. You know, people were gravitating towards, you know, whatever, whoever. Oh man, this sound is cool, but I like this sound. So he was asking me like, what are you going to do to kind of separate yourself? And that was a question that I never asked myself when I got into the situation. And what I came up with, you know, I was on the phone with my best friend at the time and we were talking because it was after we had that conversation. And I was talking to my best friend. I was like, yo, like, you know, Khan said this, like, what do you think? Like, how should I approach it? And we were just going back and forth. We were on the phone for about an hour and we went back and forth. And what we came up with was, yo, you need to just be the best you. You need to be the best Jae Skeese. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. It doesn't matter. Like, tell your story and be the best you. Like, don't worry about being better than anybody else. You already the best. So be the best you, the best version of you. And that's how you'll, like, if you're being the best you won't have to worry about being this person or that person or being better than this person or that person because you're being you authentically. And I think once we had that conversation, it just kind of unlocked another part of like my artistry in my mind. I was able to like really lock in. And I think so we had that conversation one night. The next day, we went to the studio and I made it's a song from my album, which is like it's like one of the best songs on there. I'm being very vulnerable on it. And then I also made Grace from La Machina. And that joint is like one of the illest songs on the tape, if you ask me. You know what I mean? Kyle came on and he did his thing. But, you know, the song started out with me doing that verse, doing that hook. So, and I think from there, I just haven't looked back.
Well, I think it's always it's like a 50-50, again, like you said, of like, how will I brand myself? Like, did you have other options? Like before, was there other things that you were thinking about? Like maybe this is how I'll separate myself, or maybe that is how I'll separate myself?
I think it wasn't even, no, I don't think I ever even asked myself that, because I was already going into it like, well, I'm already me. So, I don't need to necessarily, it just wasn't, a question I asked myself. No, to answer your question, like, is as simply as possible. It wasn't something I asked myself.
Well, I think it's great advice for any artist. And I tend to agree that, like, you know, your impersonation of a different artist is never going to be as good as authentically yourself. Like that, I've always believed that you can try and be like Biggie or Tupac or anyone, any of the greats, Lauryn Hill. You can try and be like them, but like the reason they were so good was because they are themselves. They didn't do an impersonation of somebody else. They never did. And that's what gives them authenticity. And if I look at every top artist in the game, it doesn't matter, even industry wise, they're pretty much authentically themselves. They may not even write their own bars. They may not even do half of that shit, but like on interviews, on like their persona, they're all just themselves. Like they are who they are. And you kind of get attracted to that part of it. Whereas like when you see artists who are putting on a show, I think you kind of go, there's something missing, man. Like there's just something that there's like a gap, and I don't think fans can even say it, but they can feel it. So I think that was, it's the best advice any artist can be, is like just find your voice, whatever that is.
I think, when you're starting out, because even me, being younger, like my favorite rapper back in the day was between Jay-Z and Lloyd Banks. You know what I mean? And I used to rap a lot like Lloyd Banks, like not even just cadence, like everything. And I just thought Lloyd was like one of the best rappers. Like I thought he was the best rapper, period, because of the way he would structure his bars, his metaphors, similes, the words he used. He would just make you think like, oh, what made you say that? And so that's what I wanted to be. And I think starting out, it's only natural because you get inspired by other artists. You know what I mean? They make you want to do it. And that was how I was. And then, there comes a period where, you're emulating what you hear and, what you think is dope. And then true artistry, I think, comes later when you start to perfect your craft. You start to master it. And you say, okay, I don't need to keep trying to be like this because I have to do it the way that I do it. And I paint as well. And it's similar in that regard too, because, I was inspired by a lot of different painters. And, I used to say, okay, well, I want to paint, and I want my paintings to look like Salvador Dali's. You know what I mean? And because I really liked Salvador Dali's paintings. And I started out and I would, do what I would do, da, 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 da. And then one day it clicked for me and said, okay, you know what? Instead of me trying to make Salvador Dali's, I have my own style. I have the style that I can do. Let me start to try and do what I can do and figure out my own style. And it was like the same way in music too. So, I think it's just natural. You know what I mean? You get inspired by whatever you see, whatever you hear. And then over time, you start to develop your own style. And something that you said with fans being able to almost feel when people aren't being authentically themselves, you feel it because art should make you feel something. Music is art, right? And I think people always forget that. Art is you just taking whatever emotion you feel at a certain time and turning it into something like tangible, visual, audible, that can make someone else feel what you felt in that time, in that moment. But you have to be able to feel it though. That's the thing. Like, if I don't feel you, then the art isn't, whatever you did isn't serving its purpose. So if all you're doing is emulating something else, you won't be able to feel it because you never put any feeling into it. You didn't put your real emotion into it. Art is emotion. That's all it is. So what you said is like 100% true. Like fans can feel that because they don't feel it.
I love that. We're going to need to get a t-shirt that says art is emotion. Like that's going to be the thing. Cause yeah, I agree. I think before you even mention that. I think, as I said, like we probably never even thought about it, but it's 100% true. Art is definitely emotion and what you put into it. And the interesting thing when you're growing up is like you're looking at all these artists and you're trying to emulate them because you're trying to like learn the tricks and learn the skill set that they have. And the older you get, you're like, all right, I learned this skill set. I learned that skill set. How can I put it together to have my own way? So I think it would be strange if you didn't look at artists and be like, how can I learn off them? Because ultimately, that's where we learn. We learn off listening and seeing others do it and then trying to replicate it. And that's in every industry. That's not just in music. But I did want to ask you about your art. You mentioned painting and probably something that probably not a lot of rappers paint. So I did want to ask, like, what inspired you to paint and let kind of your emotions out in that form as well?
I think what it was, and this was, it's crazy. This was right around COVID, like around that time when COVID started jumping off, and I got furloughed from my job. I've been a fan of art for a very long time. Like I've always loved going to museums, like even like way before, the drum work deal, and even before I started painting. Like I would go to, different places. I would go to like California and I would go to the Getty, or I would go to, New York, and I would go visit, different galleries there. So I've just always been a fan. Like when I was younger, I used to draw and stuff like that, but I never thought I was good, and so COVID comes and, I'm at home all the time, and I would go on YouTube and I would go, watch all these different art documentaries because there was nothing else to do. I was tired of watching movies and shit. So, I started watching these different documentaries, and I was watching how Basquiat started, got his start in art and things like that. And, just kind of understanding his style. And it kind of took me back to like a period in my childhood where I would always say, I'm not good at drawings. I'm not good at painting. So I don't want to do it. I was always real good at like writing bars. So that's what I went towards, but I still had a real love for painting and for art and for drawing too. And so I was at home, and one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the art store. I'm going to go and get a canvas, and I'm going to go get some paint, and I'm just going to see what I come up with, like whatever. Like it doesn't have to be, I don't have to hold myself to a certain standard or anything. That's not what I was thinking. I just wanted to see what I would do. And so, I go to the store, I get my stuff, I get my easel, I do all that. And, I came up with like, actually, I didn't even have an easel. I just had like an art desk at the time. So I was just painting, and, I did my thing. I did my first one, and, it was a picture of a strawberry. And the way it was, if you flipped it, it looked like almost like a forest or like a bunch of tall grass that was on fire. So it was just like, it was real cool. And then I did my second one, and I was working on like the second one and the third one, and I wanted to do bigger canvases, and I was just telling different stories. And it was on these canvases, and it was kind of like when I write my bars, I say things. I have a lot of metaphors and similes that I use. So what I was doing was I was painting these pictures, and I was doing it like similarly, like with using the different pictures. I was telling stories through pictures. And when I figured out that I could do that, even though I didn't really have like the best skill set when it came to drawing certain characters or whatever I was thinking, it just kind of translated. Like, I was like, okay, I'm actually pretty good at this. Like, this is actually dope. And then visually, it was dope. You know what I mean? And just over time, like, I guess I kind of just built up my skill set over time. And, I hadn't been doing it for a long time, but what I ended up doing was I took a U-Haul, like the moving truck. I don't know if you know what a U-Haul is,
Yeah,
but yeah. So I went and got one of those, and I was with one of my friends. He paints too. And we took the U-Haul and we rolled out a red carpet in it. We parked it in like this park, and we took like these different strip tapes and put them on the back of our paintings. and put them all throughout this U-Haul truck. And we turned this U-Haul truck into an art gallery. And then we invited all these different people to come out and come and, just come and look at the art, come and, come and see it. And people came, and I shot a video there and people, they're looking all around the truck, and we had everything just kind of outside. And I think that's when it kind of clicked for me, like, yo, like, you're actually doing this. And it was like, it's kind of like similar, like with music, you make your first couple songs, you think they're dope. All right, cool, whatever. And then, you may go do a show, and then you may go put together a mixtape and put it out. And it's like, hold up, like, I'm actually doing this, and it's actually dope. People actually like it. You know what I mean? And that was kind of how it was with painting for me too. You know what I mean?
That is such a good idea. Like, I've had a good idea on this show. You've had, that's a great idea. So simple. Like, you don't need to rent a space. You just, do it cheap. You put it publicly. What was the reception of people when they were looking through? Were they like surprised? I mean, I would be surprised. I would be like, who's this rapper who's got a U-Haul and he's got art in there as well? It's just so interesting.
Yeah, it was like, and I'm not gonna lie, like when I started painting, a lot of what I was doing was for me. You know what I mean? I wasn't really worried about how it would be received, because I wasn't even thinking like, okay, I'm gonna take this stuff outside and let other people see it. I didn't even want to do that. Because of what you just said, I was already building myself up and calling myself this artist. I'm this rapper. People knew me for that. So I didn't want people to say, oh, well, damn, like Skee's been a rapper for forever. Now all of a sudden he's painting, like, get this shit out of here. And that was like a big thing for me. Like, honestly, that was like, because I didn't know how people would receive it. I was actually kind of scared about that. I wasn't sure if people would even understand what it was that I was trying to do with a lot of my paintings, because a lot of my stuff is very abstract. So it was weird. It was like, I didn't know how people would receive it. But I guess, like, I don't know. I broke through that fear almost. You know what I mean? It was a big fear of mine to even, but I guess it's different with music, because I was so used to already, putting out projects and people hearing me and everything. But that was like a big fear of mine for people to say, okay, what made you all of a sudden want to just start painting? Because I didn't know how people would like react to it. You know what I mean? It was I don't know. It was a fear thing for sure, but it was something that I conquered at the same time, because I brought it to life. You know what I mean?
Interesting though, that like, I'm sure people look at you now and you as a rapper and you doing shows. I mean, you've done a show with like Big Crit. You've done some amazing shows, and like, they look at that and they're like, how can you be scared of putting up art in a U-Haul for the public to watch when literally you're on stage for thousands of people? And I think, you know what I mean? It's like the weirdest thing that, as you said, you're probably just used to it, but it's like another side of you that you're sharing.
Right. And that's not easy to do. Like, it's not, people don't, if you're not an artist, you don't even understand what it is to even put your story out there for it to be, heard, or your work to be put out there, because you don't know how it'll be received. You could tell your story on a painting, right? It could be something very traumatic that happened to you. I have paintings like that where I'm telling a story that's very traumatic. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm talking about, you know what I mean, like drugs and like my dad and like, some other stuff. And somebody can see it and say, well, yo, this is trash. What is this shit? And it's like, yo, this is literally my most like traumatic event that I've done. So you don't know how it'll be received. So it's different, because like, I don't know, it's just a different, it's different. It's a different medium. It's a different way of taking my story and, telling you my story. It's a different way of doing it. So I guess if you don't do it, then you don't really understand it. But I think if you're on the other side of it, being the artist, you know what you put into it. So, it's like, man, do I really want to, take this out into the world? Like, you know what I mean? That's just kind of how it is.
Do you have art like or artists that you gravitate towards, like a particular style that you find yourself, enjoying more than others?
You mean like painting wise, or do you mean just like paintings or music or
I meant more paintings. Like when you go to a gallery, are there people that you're like, I have to see, or I have to see like this type of art?
No, because I think I get inspired by pretty much everything. Like I've been to, like I went to the Getty one time, and they had a Rembrandt exhibit, and this was like paintings from when he went to India in like I don't know what time period it was. Rembrandt was like I want to say he was like 18th century, but I could be wrong. He was either 18th or like 16th century, one or the other. But they were paintings from then, and it was just it was real interesting to me to see his vision from hundreds of years ago and how detailed and how vivid it was. It took me back to that that period, whatever period that was. I can't remember, but to see that alone, because it kind of puts your mind in that perspective. Like we live in the time that we live in right now, which is 2023 or 2022. How like it's almost like how did he like take his vision and like put it on this piece of paper or whatever it is back then without having a smartphone or like without having any type of what I mean, like direction for real. Like he didn't have other people that he could have went to. Well, I'm sure there was other like galleries and stuff like that, but it's just like, how did you do that back then? And it's like it's almost like it put me in a frame of mind like if he could do this back then, I could do it right now too. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's like a specific style, because I really like sculptures too. It's not something that I could ever see myself doing personally, but I love going to see, like, I remember I was in DC one time, and I was in like the, what do they call it? The National Mall, and they got all those different, galleries down there. And there was like some different sculptures that I saw at one of the galleries, and it was just like, it was like beautiful. It was like, yo, who made this and what inspired you to make this? Like, why did you make this? I can't even believe that someone made this. You know what I mean? It's like, it was like that level of awesomeness. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yo, this is crazy. So I'm inspired by just like so many different things, like not just, music, not just paintings, not just sculptures, even other people's stories. But I think too, that comes from actually being out in the world and like seeing different things. I've been a lot of different places. I've seen a lot of different things, met a lot of different people, heard a lot of different stories. And some people, they're not open to it. So they can't be inspired in that way. Me, I try not to limit, I just try to keep an open mind, because that's important, because everything that you see, like you feed your brain. You're feeding yourself and just gaining more and more information and just, experiencing different things, trying different food, shaking different hands, seeing different buildings. Like you have to, because, once you have all those different things in your arsenal, it's like, okay, how can I take all this stuff that I put into my head and make some of the best art, whatever it is that you're doing, make the illest shit you ever seen in your life.
I cannot agree more. And yeah, I look at sculptures and I'm like, I don't even know. Number one, I don't know how they took a piece of like raw material, like stone, and they carved it out. Like,
right.
When you said you never were a great drawer, I was never a good drawer. I can't draw to save my life, but this person can not only draw, they can literally carve it into stone, and like it is amazing. I was in Florence and in Italy, in Europe, they have them everywhere, and I just remember looking at them going, how is that possible? Like I don't, especially because of the time period, as you said. It's like one thing with like modern machinery to be able to do more work, but like I'm just imagining these people just like chiseling away, one piece at a time, and if you fuck up, you got to start again. Like
right.
if a finger goes, it's gone. What do you do? Like all these things I just find so amazing. It just shows what we're all capable of. Is like if we really put ourselves like in the frame of mind, if we really committed, we could do all these amazing things. I remember I was in Denver recently and I went to their exhibit and there was this piece of art. I personally get like, I find myself attracted to art that speak to the human condition. I've never been a huge fan of just like scenic. I can appreciate scenic stuff, but I like something about seeing someone's face and like a period in time. And there was this one piece. It's the only one that I took a photo of because it just hit me in the right way. I might have to send it to you, but it was like, it was a commentary of like what it was like being in the circus in like the 1800s. And it was like the circus performer had passed away. So he died in the show. And it was like, he was almost like a ghost in the background. And it was his wife and his wife holding their baby. And there was something that was so sad about it. It was like this still image and I was just like, I don't know what it is about this. I forget the artist's name. But it was just like, it just hit me in the right way. And I think you're right that like, there's something about art and it's taken me a while to realize that you don't have to like every piece of art. You just got to find the art that you like and the art that makes you feel something. And that's all that it really is.
Yeah, that's all that matters, man. And even with you, like saying, you know, what you said about drawing, right? And this is what I asked myself when I started to paint and I was making that decision. I said, what is good? What is good drawing? What is good painting? What is bad painting? What is good painting? Like, you know what I mean? Because it's art, there's no real measuring stick for that. It's all subjective. So the thing that you have to do is if you want to be great at drawing, you have to draw things that make you like that are accurate representation of what you feel. You feel what I'm saying? And the way that you get better at it is, okay, say today I want to draw this cat. And when you first draw it, it may be like a stick figure, but you know, you're the only person that knows what you're going for. So you have to, okay, boom. And you may draw it in a certain way. It may look like Picasso. It may look like, I don't know, like Rembrandt, whatever. It may be that detailed or it may be not that detailed. But either way, as you're drawing, you're getting closer and closer to how you want it to feel, how you want to see it, and how you want it to be perceived. Then that's the measuring stick for it being good or bad, not it looking like a stick figure or it looking like Rembrandt drew it. You know what I mean?
I think that's what I struggled with. I have this image of something in my head and I want that specific image, but I never thought about the feeling. I never thought about like I remember doing art at school and I'd be like, yeah, I want to draw a cat. And then I draw a cat and it doesn't look anything like a cat. And I was like, well, that's a shit cat. So then I would just be like, okay, I'm not good at art. That was the thought process. That was like, I wasn't measuring it. And I didn't even realize until now that I should have been following the feeling of what I wanted to achieve, not the objective of like, oh, I have to draw this or draw that object. And then when I compare it to the real life object, it wasn't even close. And I was like, okay, I'm bad.
And the reason for that is we go based off of like when we see a picture, like we're going off of what we've seen in the past and not going off of like how we want it to look. Like if all you see is Picasso's and you're like, okay, when you draw it, it doesn't look like a Picasso, then it's not good. Or if all you see is like realism, like, you know what I mean? You want this cat to look just like a real life cat, the way that you see it, and you draw it and it doesn't look like that. It's like, oh, it's not good. But no, it's not that it's not good. It's just not how you wanted it to look or how it made you feel. So you have to get it to where, okay, this is how I feel. You know what I mean? This is how this made me feel. If you get what I'm saying, that's the way that I look at it, because that's what made me like say like, okay, I'm a decent artist. Like I'm actually pretty good at this because I was able to make things that made like sense to my, like the way that I felt in that time. And I will say too, the fact that I figured that out about myself made me a way better rapper because I was able to capture again the way that I felt in a lot of like when I'm writing. I was able to capture the way that I felt when I was writing at the time And so it made me say, okay, instead of being so worried about like the technical part of rapping, like me rhyming this word with this word, because I still do that, but I don't really care so much about that. I care more about now not making you say, ooh, 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 like he said this. I care more so about what did the song make you feel like? Like, did you connect with what I said? Did it make you say, okay, yeah, I felt like that too before? Damn, nobody has ever made me feel like this in a song. That's what I care about now. I don't really care so much about making you say ooh and ah. Like, I can always do that. That's easy. But the fact that I started painting and I realized that made me just care more about putting certain emotions into my music.
You know, it's so funny that you answered that question, or you said that. That was literally going to be my next question. How did you feel? I was like, oh my God, he's reading my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really cool that you figured that out about yourself. You know, you took something that was, you know, a tough period in your time, in your life, where, you know, as you said, you were no longer working your job. It was COVID, and now for you to literally be able to transition your art, literally painting, into your other art form, only makes you a more complex and more interesting and more a deeper artist, as opposed to just on the surface level. I wonder if a lot of rappers would benefit from doing a second form of art, of exploring their own intellectual being and their own being in a different way, and what it would do to how they create.
I think I don't see it like, I don't see anyone not benefiting from it. I'm also just a very self-aware person, though. You know, you have to be, not saying that you have to be, but where I am just as a human being, I think help with that too. You know what I mean? You have to be open to it. That's the thing. Like, a lot of people will tell themselves, just like, you know, how we just said, like, oh, I'm not a good painter, so I'm not even gonna try, or, you know, whatever. It's funny, like my mother, she's been, you know, she has her battles with like depression and, you know, different things. And I took my mom to my art studio when I still had one. And you know, I took her there one day. She was, you know, dealing with something. I was like, hey, I want you to come with me. So we go, and I had a blank canvas there for her. And I was like, Mom, just sit down. You know, I had all my paint out, and I was like, Mom, sit down and, you know, just paint. Like, whatever, however you feel. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, just paint what you feel. Like, paint, you know, whatever. My mom, now mind you, my mom is actually a poet. She's published a book before. But I had never seen her do anything like this before. I'd never seen her draw. I never saw her paint, nothing like that. I've only ever seen her, you know, write her poetry. And a lot of it I just saw because I was like snooping through her stuff and I was looking, oh, okay, you do this, whatever. So, you know, I tell her, you know, just sit down, like, you know, do your thing. And she sits down and she drew, it was like a picture of her face, and it had all these different thoughts, like these different thought bubbles. And, you know, she was thinking about different things. And it was like a picture of her like crying, and she had all these different thoughts. And since then, she has probably painted, she's done so many paintings since then. Like, she went home and like went to the art and craft store, got her own canvases. Like, she started doing other like forms of art, like these bead art pieces. Like, she's done all this different stuff. And I asked her, I was like, well, why did you, you know, decide to start doing this stuff? She was like, well, it was that one time when you took me to the art studio, and I really liked the way that this made me feel. And it helped me kind of get through some stuff at the time. It helped me like just release some emotions too. And I think, you know, to go back and answer your question, just because of that experience that I had with my mom, you know, and it may not be painting for other artists. It may be, you know, you may make pottery, or you may make, you know, sculptures, or, you know, whatever it is that you do, you know what I mean? But I don't think anyone would not benefit from, you know, just trying other, you know, other forms of art. Why not? You know what I mean?
How did you feel when you saw your mum finish that first piece of her crying and the thought bubbles? Like, what did you get from that? What did you feel? And when you saw it?
It kind of validated things that I already knew, you know, about my mom. It was almost like like I know there's always a million things on her mind, and she's going through what she's going through, her different struggles and everything. But to see it on on a canvas, it's just kind of like it was a validation. Like, yo, I know this is what's always on your mind. You know what I mean? And a lot of the time, like, and it was funny because she did it too. When I paint, I usually paint from like my subconscious, meaning I don't think about it too much. I just kind of let whatever happens happen. It just kind of comes out. You know what I mean? And I think that's what she was doing too, because everything that she was putting onto the canvas was stuff that, again, like we had a conversation about. We may have argued about a few things, or, I knew that she was feeling anxious about, and that was what kind of came out. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a tough time in her life. And it was real interesting to see, because it was kind of like I said, it was like the ultimate like validation. Like, I knew this was on your mind already. That's crazy.
It's cool to think that you could both open a gallery together. That that you could both and that you helped your mum find this part of her that she probably never thought existed. And, it makes sense though that she's a poet, you're an artist, you're a rapper, and you feel comfortable with words. Like, yeah, it's really interesting to me. Like, the apple never really falls far from the tree. I think sometimes we've got to look at our roots and really embrace. It's like, a racehorse in a way. All the race horses that are successful have successful parents, or like they have those attributes. So I wonder if we as humans it doesn't even have to be success, but it can be like find the attributes of our parents that what maybe even untapped, that we can tap into and find that part of ourselves. And it sounds like you've definitely found that version in terms of artistry, in terms of creativity, in terms of being emotionally aware, because that's what it sounded like with your mum as well. She's aware of her emotions, just never express them. But I think definitely, the longer we speak, the more I'm like, I can see the depth of artist of who you're becoming and like
Right.
who you're growing to be. So that is just an awesome thing. It must be awesome to feel that way as well, that like you're just uncovering continually things about yourself and about your art.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, we just us as human beings, man, we grow every day. You know what I mean? We learn every day. And I just think like we just get so stuck in like, because life will really put you in a box. Life, like people will put you in a box, but life has a way of putting you in a box. And I can speak on it because I've been that person. Like, I was that person 3-4 years ago that was like working a 9 to 5. I was taking care of my daughter. My daughter is 6 now. I was working 2 jobs, you know what I'm saying? Trying to pay for daycare and, you know what I'm saying? Working these jobs. I was working at an overnight job, man. I was like slicing deli meat. I was washing dishes. I was selling cigarettes, all in the same job, going into the freezer, cold as shit. You know what I'm saying? Like pulling meat out, like pause, like all this other crazy shit. And then I was working like my regular full-time job. And then I had a brand new baby girl. So it was like, I wasn't even able to work. I mean, I wasn't even able to like write and make raps and, you know what I'm saying, be creative. And man, I was like at my lowest in that time, because naturally I'm just a creative person, whether it may be me writing raps or, painting or, writing short stories. That was how I started. I started out writing short stories. And doing all these different things. And like I said, life has a way of putting you in a box. But then like, if you can figure out how to like kind of get out of that box and stay out of that box, then like your potential just continues to grow. You know what I mean? You can be anything, like literally, like you can do anything you want to. I never, like when I first started painting, I did it for myself. But I never was saying like, okay, I'm going to take these paintings and I'm going to sell them. You know what I mean? I've sold paintings for $1,000. You know what I mean? At one point, $500, $750. I think I sold my first one for maybe $110. But it never like crossed my mind. Yeah, I'm going to take these things that I did and I'm going to sell them. No, I was doing them for myself, but I saw it in my mind that I was going to, do these different things first. And then I did them. So it's like, you can do anything that you put your mind to. It's just not allowing yourself to be boxed in. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's a awesome message to everyone, to be like, you know, you just got to find a way. I think we all have to find our way to be creative and be expressive. And I think you're definitely right. There's a tough thing with life where it can force you not to. Like, it tries to make sure that you don't. And sometimes I wonder if that's more like, you know, and it's going to sound really conspiracy like, but you know, government's way of, you know, controlling people. I think if I look through history books, the way that governments stop uprising is by controlling art and expression. And most important thing in most, you know, thought-provoking or new ideas is like literally artists. It's literally, they're the ones who can seem to get away with more because they're not verbalizing something, but they're creating something that is intangible in the way that it makes you feel. And I think that there is something to be said for feeling like you can't create. And I think it's important. And like we said, any art, it doesn't have to be painting. It can be dancing. It can be, you know, acting. It can be whatever you want it to be. But I think we're all creative in a way. And I think that we sometimes at school especially get taught, forget about creating, do your core subjects. That shit's not going to get you money. You got to get your 9 to 5. You got to get paid. Forget about creativity. Forget about it. Then you got kids and you got responsibility. And then your life has passed you by and you were never creative and you just have all these thoughts sitting inside you. So I think it's an amazing message that you were speaking about.
Appreciate that, man. You're 100% right. 100%. I agree with everything you said, man, because, you know, where I went to school at, you know, it was like a gifted school because, you know, coming up, you know, before I went to that school 5th grade through 12th grade. But it was like a school where you had to take a test to get in it. And before that, you know, I was 100% average, like, you know, kindergarten to 1st grade through, you know, 4th grade. And that was like part of the message. It was like, you know, you get into this gifted school, you go to college, you get your job, you live your life. You know what I mean? There was no emphasis really on, you know, being creative because of the type of school that it was. And then even when I was in like, you know, arts and, you know, art and music and, you know, art crafts and all that shit, I was failing art every semester, every marking period. I was failing. So, you know, it's kind of crazy now that like this is what I do. It's funny. Like I'm friends with one of my old music teachers on, you know, social media. And I remember being in her class distinctly, and she was, you know, she would have us play these different songs on like piano, and, you know, we would sing, and I just was never into it. I almost hated it. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't even like using the word hate, but I almost hated it because it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I know now seeing me like over in Europe and, you know, all over the internet doing this and doing that, she's hit me up before and said like, you know, this is crazy. Like, you're a huge inspiration to me. And it's just like, you don't even understand how bad I didn't want to be in your class when I was in it. And the fact that you were teaching music is even more ironic, knowing that this is what I do now. But, you know, life is funny, man. Life just has a funny way of just, you know, certain things happen and it's almost like unexplainable, but at the same time, it's all about, you know, where you set yourself up to be, I guess.
Well, I definitely think it has a lot to do with curriculum and them like just forcing like, this is the type of music you have to do, rather than being like, we're going to let you explore your own creativity. So, yeah. But man, speaking of the unexplainable, it brings me to my last question. It's probably going to be one of the hardest questions I ask. But if you had to recommend one album that everybody should listen to at least once, can be any genre of music, cannot be your own music, what would it be?
One album, I would say Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And the reason why is because she covers so many topics. She talks about so many different things. It's a beautiful album. Just the way that she, you know, she's an amazing singer. She's an amazing lyricist. And it just covers all the bases, honestly. Like, when you listen to that album, you get everything. And everything just sounds so beautiful, man. It's like, that's like, I feel like that is like the closest to like a perfect album. You know what I mean? And it's perfect because it's like just the range of emotions that she covers. You know what I mean? Like, I love, like, when I listen to Sade, I love the way that she sings about love. You know what I mean? Like, loving, like a woman loving a man. Like, that's what I love, because I get that from her. When I listen to Drake, I listen to, you know, we know what we listen to Drake for, right? We listen to Drake because he can convey emotion from a man about a woman in a way that a lot of people can't. You know what I mean? When I listen to Jay-Z makes me want to go out and go make $1 million because he did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and those elements, like, with those different things. And I'm saying that Lauryn Hill covers all those elements, but she found a way to, on that album, the particular emotions that she chose to talk about, the particular things that she chose to talk about, she just did it perfectly. Like, there's no other way to kind of put it. It's like, she did it perfectly, man. Like, and I just have a great deal of respect for that album, and just Lauryn as an artist, period, man. Like, she's one of my favorites, hands down. But that would be the album that I would say, like, you know what I mean? That would be the one. Miseducation from Lauryn Hill.
I love that. And, you know, I agree. I think what she did incredibly well in that album was be a strong, powerful woman, but also vulnerable, and show her emotions and what it was like to have the complexity of all of those things while also being a mother and talking about her relationships with people in her life. And I think that's what it does so well. Like, you don't look at her at any point during that and go, you've downplayed yourself. It's like, you're going through these struggles, but you've remained strong, and you've remained to be that presence of like womanhood, and still, I don't know, it's real complex. And I thought that she did it such an amazing job as well to explore all those things and all her relationships between, you know, her partners to her son and everything in between. So yeah, man, I always think it's one of the best albums, and one of the best albums that did the most for hip hop as well. I think it just showed a lot of people what you could do.
Facts. I agree with you for sure. It's an amazing work for sure.
Well, man, I always appreciate when artists come on and share and be honest and open and authentic, and never thought we would talk about art the way we spoke about art, but that's why I love not planning the shows. But obviously Jae Skeese came through. Please make sure you check him out. He's obviously got big things in the work, as we spoke about. He's signed with Conway the Machine, and you know that Conway drops absolute gold. So you're definitely going to do the same. Project just came out, the Authenticity Check. So make sure you check that out, and follow him on Spotify, IG. As we said, he's on Twitter and everything in between. But man, is there anything else you wanted to plug? Anything else you wanted to shout out?
Nah, man. You know, you already know, man. Shout out to Drumwork Music. Shout out to Conway the Machine, of course. All my people affiliated with Drumwork. All my people affiliated with the homies, man. Ocho. You know, it's everything for Weez, man. That's what we do. And like you said, man, just go follow me on all platforms at Jae Skeese, JaeSkeese. You can tap into the website too. It's Revolver, RVLVR, loaded.com. You can always tap in there. I got merch on there. I got music on there. So just make sure you slide through there and go check it out. And man, like I said, everything for Weez, you already know.